Cynthia's hands were shaking when she pushed the manila folder across the cold metal table at the 5th precinct. The fluorescent lights above hummed like angry bees. Everything felt too bright, too loud, too permanent, but she knew this was just her fear. Everything felt dangerous these days. Her thoughts, her routine, the constant looking over her shoulder that had become as natural as breathing. 6 days ago, she had woken up to the smell of roses. She had come home from a double shift at New Hope Shelter, exhausted and ready to collapse into bed. Instead, she woke up at 3 a.m. to sweetness in the air. Roses. A dozen red roses on her pillow. Right next to her face. Edward had been in her apartment, while she was sleeping. He had been standing over her watching her. Close enough to touch. When she called him screaming, demanding to know what he was doing, he had not even pretended to be sorry. He had simply laughed that low, cruel laugh she had learned to fear and said, "You really think you can just leave me, Cyn? I will always find you. No matter where you hide, no matter who you tell. You are mine. You will always be mine." That was the moment Cynthia knew the restraining order meant nothing. She had been trying to escape for 8 months before that night. Secret meetings with a lawyer Edward did not know about. Research on new apartments with better security. A therapist she saw during lunch breaks. She had read every pamphlet about leaving abusive relationships. She had memorized the steps. She had prepared for this moment. But preparing for something and actually surviving it were two very different things. Now she was here, sitting across from Detective Liam Walker. His blue eyes looked kind, professional, safe. The kind of man who would actually help. She slid photos across the table. Screenshots of threatening texts. Pictures Edward took of her without permission. Evidence of 6 months of terror. "He knows where I work," she said, her voice barely steady. "He knows my schedule. He broke into my apartment and watched me sleep." Detective Walker nodded slowly, writing notes in his pad. "You did the right thing coming here, Ms. Harris. I promise you, we will make sure he never gets near you again." She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. This was supposed to be her protection, her escape. Her way out through the system she had always trusted. But what Cynthia did not know was that her police report was about to land on the desk of someone far more dangerous than any detective. Across the city, in a penthouse that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, Jason Park sat at his desk. Tattooed. Powerful. Deadly. His phone buzzed. Detective Walker's name on the screen. "We have got a situation," Walker said when Jason answered. "Moomin just filed a report against Edward Bones. He has been stalking her. Operating in your territory without permission." Jason's jaw tightened. Edward Bones. That piece of trash had been dealing in the West Side without clearance for months. "Tell me about her." Social worker named Cynthia Harris. 27. Works at a domestic violence shelter. She helps abuse survivors for a living, and this bastard has been terrorizing her. Something shifted in Jason's chest. His sister Jenny's face flashed in his mind. Jenny, who had died in an abusive relationship 5 years ago, because Jason had not known until it was too late. "I want everything on Edward Bones by morning," Jason said, his voice cold and sharp, "and I want protection on the woman. Around the clock. She does not know we exist yet." Cynthia walked out of the precinct that night feeling hopeful for the first time in months. The system was finally working. The law would protect her. She had done everything right. She had no idea that her salvation would not come from the police. It would come from the most dangerous man in the city. The man the law called a criminal. The man who was about to make Edward Bones disappear. Before we continue, this is a story about trust, fear, and the moment a woman realizes the law can't save her. If stories like that move you, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this one. And as you listen, think about what you would do if the system you trusted suddenly failed you. Now, let's continue. 3 days after filing the police report, Cynthia stood in front of a judge and got her restraining order. Paper in hand, official seal. Edward Bones was legally required to stay 500 feet away from her at all times. She walked out of the courthouse, feeling like she could breathe for the first time in months. Finally. Progress. The system was working. What she didn't know was that across town, Jason Park was sitting in his office reading a 40-page report about her ex-boyfriend. Edward Bones wasn't just some angry ex. He was a drug dealer. Mid-level. Moving product in 3 neighborhoods. and every single one of those neighborhoods belonged to Jason. He's been using her social work connections, Detective Walker said over the phone. She works with vulnerable families. He's been following her routes, scouting locations, setting up in areas where she has clients. Jason's knuckles went white around his glass of whiskey. He's using her job to expand his business. Yeah, and she has no idea? Jason stood up and walked to the window. His city spread out below him like a map. I want a team on her. 24/7. Former military for the groundwork. Tech specialist to monitor her digital footprint. And get me someone who can blend in. A woman. Have her move into Cynthia's building if possible. Jason, this is a lot of resources for. Do it. Walker went quiet. Then he said, "You're getting too invested in this." Jason didn't answer. He just hung up. By the next morning, Cynthia had 3 shadows she didn't know about. A man named Garrett, ex-Army Ranger, who followed her car everywhere she went. A woman named Joanne who somehow got an apartment 2 doors down, and introduced herself as a new neighbor, with a warm smile and a plate of cookies. And a tech guy named Simon who had access to every camera within a mile of Cynthia's apartment. Cynthia started noticing things right away. Edward stopped showing up at her work. He stopped calling from random numbers. He stopped sitting in his car outside her building at night. It was like he just vanished. That's what restraining orders do. Shanice told her at work. They scare guys like him. He knows he'll get arrested if he comes near you. But Cynthia wasn't convinced. Something felt different. She felt watched. But not in the creepy way Edward used to watch her. This was different. Safer somehow. A black SUV always seemed to be parked near her car when she left work. The same one. Different spots, but always close. She mentioned it to Shanice during their lunch break. I think someone's following me. Shanice rolled her eyes. Girl, you're paranoid. Edward has you scared of shadows. But Cynthia knew what she felt. Then one night, it got real. She was walking to her apartment after a late shift. Tired, keys in hand, ready to collapse. And there he was, Edward, standing by her building entrance. Restraining order be damned. Her heart stopped, her feet froze, she couldn't move. Edward smiled. That slow, dangerous smile. Hey, baby, we need to talk. He started walking toward her. And then a man appeared out of nowhere. Leather jacket. Tall. Calm. He stepped right into Edward's path like he belonged there. You lost, the man said. His voice was quiet but sharp as glass. Edward stopped. This doesn't concern you. The man in the leather jacket didn't move, didn't blink. Yeah, it does. Something in his tone made Edward take a step back. Then another, he looked at Cynthia. Then at the man. Then he turned and walked away fast. Cynthia stood there shaking. Thank you, she whispered. The man nodded once. Get inside. Then he was gone. Cynthia ran upstairs. Locked every lock. Sat on her couch trying to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened the text with trembling hands. It said, "She's protected now. Walk away while you can." But it wasn't sent to her. Across town, Edward was staring at the same message on his phone. His hands were shaking with rage. Who the hell was protecting her? Who was threatening him? He threw his phone across the room. Someone was in his way. Someone powerful. Someone who wanted Cynthia for themselves. And Edward Bones wasn't about to let that happen. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Jason Park was watching surveillance footage from the shelter, where Cynthia worked. She was helping a young mother gather the courage to leave her abuser. Cynthia's hand on the woman's shoulder. Her voice soft but strong. You deserve to be safe, Cynthia said on the screen. You deserve to be free. Jason felt something crack open in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Detective Walker called. Your guy Garrett intercepted Edward tonight. Clean? No issues? Good, Jason. Why are you doing this? Jason didn't answer right away. He kept watching Cynthia on the screen. Watching her save someone else while not knowing she was being saved herself. Because someone has to, he finally said. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. And that terrified him. The restraining order lasted exactly 5 days before Edward broke it. Cynthia was at work, New Hope Shelter. Tuesday afternoon. She was in the middle of helping a client fill out housing paperwork when she heard shouting from the lobby. Her blood went cold. She knew that voice. Where is she? Cynthia. I know you're here. Edward burst through the security doors like they were made of paper. His eyes were wild. His clothes wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You think a piece of paper can keep me away from you? He screamed across the lobby. Clients scattered. Children started crying. You're mine, Cynthia. You belong to me. Cynthia froze behind her desk. Terror locked her legs in place. Security rushed Edward. 2 men grabbed his arms. He fought them like an animal. I'll kill you. You hear me? If I can't have you, nobody will. Police arrived in minutes. They dragged Edward out in handcuffs while he screamed threats the whole way. Cynthia stood there shaking. Her coworker Shanice wrapped an arm around her shoulders. It's okay, they got him. He's going to jail now. But 4 hours later, Cynthia got a call from Detective Walker. He made bail, Walker said. His voice was tight with anger. The judge said it low because he has no prior violent convictions on record. He's out. Cynthia felt the floor drop out from under her. What? I'm sorry, Ms. Harris. I tried to argue for higher bail but I did everything right. Cynthia's voice cracked. I filed reports. I got the order. I followed every single procedure you told me to follow. And he's still free. Walker was quiet for a long moment. I know, I'm sorry. Cynthia hung up. She sat at her desk and cried for the first time since this nightmare started. The system had failed her. Completely. Totally. Failed. Detective Walker sat in his car outside the precinct and punched his steering wheel. Then he called Jason. He's out, Walker said. 4 hours. The judge barely looked at the case. There was silence on the other end. Then Jason's voice came through. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. Then we do this my way. Double the security on Cynthia. I want to know everywhere Edward goes. Everyone he talks to. Every breath he takes. Jason. And find out who set his bail so low. I want names. The line went dead. Cynthia left work early. She couldn't stop shaking. Couldn't stop looking over her shoulder. She drove to the only place that felt safe anymore. Brew and Bean. A little coffee shop 3 blocks from her apartment. Warm lights. Soft music. The smell of coffee and fresh pastries. She ordered her usual caramel latte. Found a corner table. Put her head in her hands. She was so tired. So scared. So done with everything. Excuse me. Is this seat taken? Cynthia looked up. The man standing there made her forget how to breathe for a second. He was tall. Korean features. Black hair styled perfectly. Tattoos covered both his forearms. Expensive watch, designer jacket. But his eyes were what got her. Dark and intense like he could see right through her. No, Cynthia managed. Go ahead. He sat down with his coffee. Black. No sugar. Rough day. She laughed bitterly. You could say that. I'm Jason. He extended his hand. Cynthia. His handshake was firm. Confident, his hands were warm. I own a few properties in the neighborhood, Jason said casually. I come here to escape the chaos sometimes. I work nearby. Social worker. This is my decompression spot. Jason's eyes lit up with interest. Real interest. Not the fake kind guys usually showed. Social worker. That's serious work. What kind? Woman's shelter. Domestic violence survivors mostly. That takes guts. Jason said quietly. Helping people who can't help themselves. Not many people do that. Something in his voice made Cynthia feel seen. Really seen. For the first time in months, someone was looking at her like she was more than just a victim. They talked for an hour. About her work. About his businesses, which he kept vague. About the neighborhood. About life. She found herself laughing. Actually laughing. She hadn't done that in so long. When Jason stood to leave, he pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? I'd like to take you to dinner sometime, if that's okay. Cynthia hesitated. I'm going through something complicated right now. I understand. No pressure. Just, if you want to talk, or need a distraction, I'm here. She gave him her number. Their fingers brushed when he handed her phone back. Electricity shot up her arm. It was really nice meeting you, Cynthia, Jason said. You too. He walked out. Cynthia sat there staring at her phone. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. She texted Shanice immediately. I just met someone. I don't know if it's the right time, but I can't stop thinking about him. Shanice replied in seconds. Girl, details now. Cynthia smiled for the first time all day. Outside the coffee shop, Jason climbed into his car, where Garrett was waiting in the driver's seat. You sure about this, boss? Garrett asked carefully. Jason stared at the coffee shop window where Cynthia was still sitting. Still smiling at her phone. No, Jason said honestly. But it's too late now. Because the most dangerous thing had just happened. Jason Park had spent 5 years building walls around his heart after his sister died. controlled, untouchable, and Cynthia Harris had just walked right through them without even trying. The text started the next morning. Jason A. Coffee shop at 8. I'll save you the corner table. Cynthia smiled at her phone. She shouldn't. She had too much going on. But something about him made her feel safe. They texted all week. About books. About music. About her work at the shelter, which she kept vague. About his business, which he kept even more vague. What exactly do you do? She asked one night. I invest in properties. Manage some businesses, import-export. Boring stuff. She didn't push. Everyone had secrets. Friday night he texted dinner tomorrow, somewhere nice. You deserve nice. She said yes before she could overthink it. The restaurant was the kind of place Cynthia had only seen in movies. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in suits. She wore her nicest dress, black, simple. Still felt cheap compared to everything around her. Jason was already there, black shirt, no tie, tattoos on his forearms making him look dangerous even in this fancy place. He stood when she arrived, pulled out her chair. I feel out of place, she admitted. You're the most real person in here. Trust me. Dinner started smooth, easy conversation. Jason asked about her cases at work, really listened, asked smart questions, but Cynthia noticed things. The waiter appeared every 2 minutes, too attentive, nervous even. Other diners kept glancing at their table, not at her, at Jason. A man in an expensive suit walked by and nodded at Jason. Mr. Park. Jason nodded back, said nothing. You seem like someone people respect, Cynthia said carefully. Jason's smile didn't reach his eyes. Respect is a complicated word. She wanted to ask more, but something in his tone told her to leave it alone. Instead, she told him about her ex. Not his name, just the situation, the stalking, the restraining order that meant nothing, the system that failed her. I've spent my whole career believing that if you do things the right way, follow the rules, justice will happen, she said, her voice cracked. But I'm learning that's not always true. Jason reached across the table, took her hand. His grip was firm, warm, safe. Sometimes the right way isn't through official channels, he said quietly. Sometimes protection comes from unexpected places. She looked into his eyes. What does that mean? It means you're not alone, even when it feels like you are. Something passed between them. Electric, dangerous. She should pull her hand away. She didn't. Across town, Edward was losing his mind. His suppliers stopped answering calls. His crew quit without explanation. His money dried up overnight. Someone was destroying him, piece by piece. And he knew it had to be connected to Cynthia somehow. He punched a hole in his apartment wall, grabbed his phone, texted her, You think you can ruin me? I'm coming for you. Detective Walker sat in his car outside Jason's building, waiting. When Jason arrived, Walker got out. We need to talk. They stood on the sidewalk, two men in very different worlds. You're getting personally involved, Walker said. That's dangerous. For you. For her. For everyone. Jason's face went cold. Edward Bones violated his restraining order 3 times in 2 weeks. Threatened her at her job. The system failed her completely. So you're what? Her knight in shining armor. I'm making sure she survives. Something the law couldn't do. Walker shook his head. You're falling for her. That's the real problem. That Jason didn't deny it. Just keep doing your job, Walker. I'll do mine. That night, Jason walked Cynthia to her apartment door. They stood in the hallway. Close, too close. She could feel the heat coming off him. Smell his cologne. See the way he was looking at her mouth. She wanted to kiss him so badly it hurt. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to stop him. She put her hand on his chest. Wet. He stopped immediately. What's wrong? I need to be careful, she whispered. My judgment hasn't been great lately. I don't want to rush into something and... When you're ready, Jason said. No pressure, no rush. I'm not going anywhere. That made it worse. His respect. His patience. It made her want him even more. Good night, Jason. Good night, Cynthia. She went inside, locked the door, leaned against it trying to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. Edward's text glowed on the screen. You think you can ruin me? Her blood ran cold. Outside her building, Jason sat in his car. His phone rang. One of his guys. Boss, Edward just bought a gun. Unregistered. Street dealer. Jason's jaw clenched. His knuckles went white around the steering wheel. Edward wasn't backing down. He was escalating. and Cynthia had no idea how close to danger she really was. The call came at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Shanice's name on Cynthia's screen, but it wasn't Shanice's voice. Is this Cynthia Harris? A paramedic, professional, calm. Your coworker Shanice Williams was attacked in the parking lot of New Hope Shelter. She's being taken to Mercy Hospital. She's stable but… Cynthia didn't hear the rest. The phone slipped from her hand. She drove to the hospital going 20 miles over the speed limit, ran through the emergency room doors, found Shanice in a bed with her arm in a cast, her face bruised, her lips split. Oh my God. Cynthia's legs almost gave out. Shanice looked up, tears in her eyes. He said to tell you this is just the beginning. Woo. Who said? Edward. He was waiting by my car. I didn't even see him until he grabbed me. Cynthia felt like she was going to throw up. This is my fault. He hurt you because of me. Sin. This isn't. Less it is. Cynthia's voice broke. He's doing this to get to me. You're in the hospital because I exist in his world. She stayed with Shanice for 2 hours. Then went home numb, empty, broken. The knock on her door came at midnight. Detective Walker. He looked tired, worn down, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Miss Harris. Can I come in? She let him inside. Didn't offer coffee. Just stood there waiting. Walker sat on her couch, rubbed his face. I need to tell you something. You're not going to like it, but you need to know for your safety. What? He took a breath. I've been on Jason Park's payroll for 3 years. The room tilted. What are you talking about? Jason Park. The man you've been seeing. He's been protecting you since the day you filed your report. He has people watching you. Following Edward. That's why Edward's business collapsed. That's why the guy in the leather jacket showed up when Edward cornered you. Jason's been running the whole operation. Cynthia's brain couldn't process it. Jason, the businessman, he owns properties and has a crime boss, Ms. Harris. Walker's voice was flat, dead. He runs most of the underground operations in this city. Drugs, gambling, protection rackets. He's the most powerful criminal we've got. The floor disappeared under Cynthia's feet. She sat down hard on her chair. The man I've been texting. The man I had dinner with. That's Jason Park. A Walker nodded. His younger sister Jenny died 5 years ago in an abusive relationship. When I told Jason about your case, about Edward stalking you while you work at a domestic violence shelter, it triggered something in him. He sees his sister in your situation. I don't want protection from a criminal. Cynthia's voice was shaking. I help people escape violence. I can't be connected to someone who deals in it. The system failed you 3 times, Walker said quietly. Edward violated the restraining order, got released in 4 hours. Then he put your best friend in the hospital. The law can't keep you safe, but a crime boss can. Les. Walker stood up, left a business card on her coffee table. Jason wants to meet with you. Officially, no more pretending. He wants to explain everything himself. I don't want to see him. Walker headed for the door. Stopped. Edward just bought a gun, unregistered, street dealer. He's not stopping, Ms. Harris. And we both know the law isn't going to save you. He left. Cynthia sat alone in her apartment. Everything she believed was shattered on the floor around her. She had spent her entire career believing in the system, in doing things the right way, following procedures, trusting the law, and the law had failed her over and over and over. But Jason, a criminal, a crime boss, someone who operated outside every rule she'd built her life around, had kept her safe. She picked up the business card Walker left, Jason's number written on the back in Walker's handwriting. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Walker told you. I understand if you never want to see me again, but please let me explain. You deserve the truth. She stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then she looked at the photo on her phone of Shanice in the hospital bed, bruised, broken. Because of Edward. Edward who the law couldn't stop. Edward who was buying guns now. Edward who promised this was just the beginning. Cynthia typed back, tomorrow night, your place. And you better tell me everything. But she hit send before she could change her mind. Because survival wasn't about principles anymore. It was about staying alive. And the only person who could guarantee that was the most dangerous man in the city. Cynthia visited Shanice in the hospital the next morning. Brought flowers, felt like garbage. I'm so sorry, Cynthia whispered. This is all my fault. Shanice grabbed her hand with her good arm. Stop. Edward did this, not you. Detective Walker told me something. About the man I've been seeing. Jason. He's not who I thought he was. What do you mean? He's a crime boss. He's been protecting me. That's why Edward backed off for a while. That's why his business fell apart. Shanice's eyes went wide. Wet. A crime boss has been protecting you. Yeah, and now he wants to meet, to explain, to help end this. Then go. Cynthia looked at her friend. I work at a shelter helping women escape violence. How can I accept help from someone who deals in violence? Shanice squeezed her hand tight. Listen to me. Morals don't mean anything if you're dead. Do whatever you need to do to be safe. I'll be here when it's over. That night, Cynthia texted Jason. Detective Walker told me everything. We need to talk. His response came in seconds. My penthouse. Tonight, I'll send a car. Or we can meet wherever you feel safest, your choice. Always. She stared at her phone. Then typed, your place. I need to see who you really are. I'll send the car at 8. The black SUV arrived exactly on time. The same one she'd been seeing for weeks. The driver was the man in the leather jacket who'd saved her from Edward. Miss Harris. He opened the door. Professional. Respectful. The drive took 20 minutes. Into the most expensive part of the city. Buildings that cost more than entire neighborhoods. They pulled up to a tower that screamed money. Doorman. Marble lobby. Private elevator that required a key card. The elevator doors opened directly into Jason's penthouse. Cynthia stepped inside and forgot how to breathe. Floor to ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out like a kingdom. Modern furniture. Minimalist, clean lines. Artwork on the walls that probably cost more than her apartment building. But what stopped her cold was the corner by the windows. A small memorial. Photos of a young man with Jason's smile. Candles, a leather journal, fresh flowers. That she turned. Jason stood in the doorway, black shirt, jeans, tattoos covering both arms, and over his heart, inked in elegant script Jenny Park. He looked different here. More real, more dangerous, more human. Before you say anything, Jason said quietly. I need you to understand why I did this. Why you lied to me. Why I protected you without telling you. He walked to the memorial corner, touched his sister's photo. Jenny was 23. She met this guy named Ryan. Ryan seemed perfect at first, charming, supportive. Everything Jenny wanted. Jason's voice cracked. Then the control started. Small things. Then bigger things. Then the hitting. Jenny was too scared to tell me. She knew what I was. What I could do. She thought I'd kill Ryan and go to prison. Cynthia's throat tightened. I found Jenny in her apartment 5 years ago. Ryan had beaten her so badly I didn't recognize her at first. She died in the hospital 3 days later. Jason turned to face her. Tears in his eyes. I've built an empire on violence and control. I'm the most powerful man in this city. And I couldn't protect the one person who mattered most. Jason. When Walker told me about you, a woman helping abuse survivors while being terrorized yourself, I saw Jenny. I saw a chance to not fail this time. Cynthia's tears fell. I'm not your redemption project. I'm not your dead sister. No. Jason stepped closer. You're not. You're a woman I've come to care about deeply. A woman I met under circumstances I wish were different. But Edward isn't going to stop. The legal system failed you completely. I can end this. How? Let me protect you officially. No more secrets. And when the time comes, I'll make sure Edward never hurts anyone again. And what do you want from me? Her voice shook. Jason's smile was sad. Nothing. If you walk out that door tonight, my people will still protect you. You'll never see me again. But if you stay, if you let me help you the right way, I promise Edward will never touch you or anyone else. Cynthia looked at the memorial, at Jenny's photo, at the sister Jason couldn't save. She thought about Shanice in the hospital, about Edward buying guns, about the restraining order that meant nothing, about how the system she trusted had failed her over and over, and about how this criminal, this dangerous, powerful man, had kept her safer than the law ever did. I need time to think, she whispered. But I'm not saying no. Jason nodded. Take all the time you need. She turned to leave. Stopped at the elevator. Jason? Yeah, thank you, for telling me the truth. The doors closed. Jason stood alone in his penthouse staring at his sister's memorial. His phone buzzed. One of his guys, boss, Edward just tried to buy explosives. We intercepted. He's getting desperate. Jason's blood ran cold. Edward wasn't just dangerous anymore. He was preparing for war, and Cynthia was running out of time to decide. 3 days of silence. 3 days of Cynthia thinking, processing, deciding. Then she texted Jason, "I'm in, but on my terms." He called immediately. "What terms?" "I need to know the plan. Every detail. I need to have a say in how this happens. I won't be a pawn." Jason's voice was warm, relieved. "You were never a pawn. You've always had the choice." They met at his penthouse that afternoon. Jason, Detective Walker, and 3 of Jason's people. Garrett, Joanne, Simon the tech guy. Jason spread blueprints across his dining table. "We use you as bait." Cynthia's stomach dropped. Bait. Edward is desperate. Paranoid. Dangerous. We need to draw him out in a controlled environment where we can end this. Either he gets arrested with charges that will stick this time, or our way, meaning he never touches anyone again. Ever. Walker jumped in. "I'll be there with backup. Everything will be legal. On paper at least." Simon pointed to a laptop. "We'll set up a fake social media account. Make it look like you're meeting a friend at this parking structure downtown. Abandoned. No cameras. Perfect place for Edward to make his move. And you'll all be there. Every inch of that structure will be covered," Garrett said. His voice was military. Precise. "You'll be wired. We'll hear everything. You'll never be in real danger." Cynthia looked at the blueprints, at the team, at Jason. "Tomorrow night." Her hands started shaking. "That's fast." Jason took her hand. "Edward tried to buy explosives 3 days ago. We don't have time to wait." That night Cynthia stood on Jason's penthouse balcony. City lights stretched forever. She felt small. Scared alive. Jason came outside with 2 glasses of wine. Handed her one. "I've spent my whole life believing there was a clear line between good and evil," she said quietly. "You've shown me that line is blurry." "I'm not a good man, Cynthia." Jason leaned against the railing. "I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. But I've never hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and I've never let innocent people suffer when I could prevent it." "Is that how you justify it?" "No. I don't justify it. I just live with it." She turned to face him. "What happens after Edward? Where does that leave us?" Jason set down his glass. Looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. "I don't know. I can't promise you a normal life. My world is dangerous. People will judge you for being with me. But I can promise I will never lie to you. Never control you. And always give you the choice. That's all I need." He stepped closer. Yeah. Jason cupped her face with both hands, leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their kiss was soft at first, tender. Then deeper. Intense. 6 weeks of tension and fear and attraction pouring into this one moment. When they pulled apart, Cynthia's heart was racing. "That was. I know." They stood there holding each other, both knowing tomorrow night everything could go wrong. This might be their last peaceful moment. "I'm scared," Cynthia whispered. "Me too." The next evening, Jason's team went through final preparations. Garrett positioned on the 3rd level. Joanne on the ground floor. Simon in a van monitoring cameras they'd installed. Detective Walker arrived with 2 uniformed cops, both on Jason's payroll. "If this goes wrong," Walker said quietly, "I can't protect any of us. We'll all go down." Jason's face was stone. "It won't go wrong." Cynthia arrived at 9 p.m. Normal, vulnerable. The wire was hidden under her shirt. Tiny, invisible. "Testing," Simon said in her earpiece. "Can you hear me?" She nodded once. "Good. We're Lev. Everyone's in position. Walk to the 2nd level, north corner. Make it look natural." Cynthia's legs felt like concrete, but she walked, 1 foot in front of the other. The parking structure was dark, empty, cold. Her footsteps echoed. She reached the 2nd level, north corner. Leaned against a pillar like she was waiting for someone. Her phone buzzed. The fake social media post had gone live 10 minutes ago. If Edward was watching, and he always was, he'd seen it. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. "Maybe he's not coming," Cynthia whispered. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Coming from the darkness. Edward stepped into the light, gun in his hand, eyes wild. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Hello, Cyn," he said with that smile she used to love and now feared. "Did you really think I wouldn't find you?" Cynthia's blood turned to ice. This was it. No more running. Tonight, one way or another, this ended. Hello, Cyn, Edward said, gun hanging loose in his hand. Did you really think you could avoid me forever? Cynthia's heart slammed against her ribs. She forced herself to stay calm. I just want this to stop. Edward, what do you want from me? He laughed. Wild. Broken. What do I want? I want you back. I want things the way they were. I want you to remember that you're mine. He shoved the gun in his waistband. Pulled out a knife instead. The blade caught the light. Move in. Jason's voice came through everyone's earpieces. Slow. Don't spook him. Garrett started down from the 3rd level. Joanne moved from the shadows, but they were too far. Edward closed the distance in 2 steps. Grabbed Cynthia. Spun her around. Knife pressed against her throat. She felt the cold steel on her skin. Felt his breath on her neck. Smelled the desperation on him. I know someone's been helping you. Edward hissed in her ear. Someone destroyed my business. Turned my people against me. Someone powerful. But if I can't have you, they can't either. The blade pressed harder. Cynthia felt a sting. A trickle of blood. Edward. She kept her voice steady. Used every de-escalation technique she'd learned in 7 years of social work. You're not a violent person. The man I met 2 years ago wouldn't do this. You made me this way. His voice cracked. You made me into this monster. No. You chose this. Shut up. Then a voice came from the shadows. Cold. Deadly. Let her go. Jason stepped into the light. Hands visible, empty, unarmed. But the way he moved was pure danger. Edward's eyes went wide. Jason Park. So you're the one who destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life when you put your hands on her. Jason took another step closer. But I'm giving you a choice. Let her go. Face charges. Do your time. You'll live. And if I don't. Jason's smile was ice. You won't leave this parking structure. Edward pressed the knife harder. Cynthia gasped. More blood. I know I can. Jason moved closer. Slow. Like approaching a wounded animal. You have 5 seconds to decide. Live in prison or die in this parking lot. I'd rather die than lose her. Edward pulled the knife back to stab. One fast motion. Jason moved faster. He grabbed Edward's wrist. Twisted. The knife clattered to the concrete. Then Jason had Edward on the ground. Face first. Knee in his back. 3 seconds. Maybe less. Garrett and Joanne rushed in. Zip ties on Edward's wrists. Professional, clean. Detective Walker appeared with 2 uniformed cops. Lights flashing in the distance. Edward Bones. Walker said officially. You're under arrest for attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, stalking. Multiple violations of a restraining order. This isn't over. Edward screamed as they dragged him up. I'll find her again. Oh no. Jason stood. Brushed off his hands. You won't. Walker leaned in close to Edward. Whispered something only he could hear. Edward's face went white. Silent. They shoved him in the police car. We found evidence in his apartment. Walker told Jason quietly. Drugs. Unregistered weapons. Digital evidence linking him to that assault case from March. He's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Jason nodded. Make sure it sticks. It'll stick. The police cars drove away. Garrett and Joanne disappeared back into the shadows. Simon packed up the surveillance equipment. Cynthia stood there shaking, adrenaline draining out of her like water. Her legs gave out. Jason caught her, held her. It's over. You're safe now. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed. 6 months of terror. 6 months of looking over her shoulder. 6 months of restraining orders that meant nothing. Over. Finally over. You're bleeding, Jason said softly. He touched her neck where Edward's knife had cut. Shallow. Not deep. You were incredible, the way you kept him talking. Bought us time. She looked up at him. I was terrified. I know. But you did it anyway? He kissed her forehead. That's courage. They stood there in the empty parking structure. Just the 2 of them. The most dangerous man in the city, and the social worker who'd crossed every moral line she'd ever drawn. What happens now? Cynthia whispered. Jason pulled back, looked at her with those dark eyes. Now we figure out if you can love someone like me. If I can be the man you deserve. If we can build something real out of all this chaos. And if we can't, then at least you're alive. At least you're free. That's enough for me. But Cynthia knew it wasn't enough for her. Not anymore. She'd tasted safety in his arms, felt protected by his darkness, seen the man behind the monster, and there was no going back to her old life. Not after tonight. Not after everything. The question was, could she build a new one with him? 3 months later, Edward Bones was sitting in a prison cell facing 15 to 20 years. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, drug trafficking, weapons charges, and evidence linking him to an assault from 6 months ago that detectives had never been able to solve. Some of that evidence was real. Some of it was manufactured by Jason's people so perfectly that no one would ever prove otherwise. 2 other women came forward after Edward's arrest. Women he'd terrorized before Cynthia. Their testimonies made the case airtight. Edward wasn't getting out anytime soon. Maybe never. Detective Walker was facing an internal investigation. Questions about his connection to the case. But Jason had people protecting him from behind the scenes. Walker would survive with his career intact. Barely. Cynthia had transformed completely. She still worked at New Hope Shelter. Still helped domestic violence survivors. But she'd started something new. A partnership with community protection organizations. That's what she called them publicly. What they really were was Jason's network, operating in the gray areas where the law couldn't or wouldn't go. Protecting women the system had failed. I still believe in doing things the right way, she told a reporter doing a story on the shelter. But I've learned that sometimes the right way isn't the legal way. Sometimes survival is more important than procedure. Her co-workers thought she'd become jaded, cynical. She'd actually just become realistic. Cynthia and Jason had been building their relationship slowly. Honestly, no more secrets. No more pretending. She knew exactly who he was. What he did. The blood on his hands that would never wash clean. He showed her every part of his world. The dangerous parts. The ugly parts. The parts that would make most people run. She stayed. Jason had started changing too, slowly. Some of his operations were transitioning to legitimate businesses. Real estate. Clubs that actually followed the law. Investments that didn't involve drugs or violence. I can't change overnight what took generations to build, he told her one night. But I can change the direction. For you, for us. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not, I know, but I want to be better. You make me want to be better. Now they stood on Jason's penthouse balcony. City lights spread out forever below them. The same city that had almost destroyed her. Now it felt different. Safer. Like home. 3 months ago, Cynthia said softly, I walked into a police station believing the system would save me. It didn't. You did. Jason pulled her closer. You saved yourself. I just made sure you had the space to do it safely. People would say what we have is wrong. A social worker and a crime boss. People will always have opinions about things they don't understand. What matters is what we know to be true. Cynthia turned to face him. I know that you're dangerous. I know that your world operates outside the law. I know that loving you means accepting moral complexity I never wanted. And I also know that you're the person who saw me when I was invisible. Who protected me when the system abandoned me. Who gave me choice when everyone else tried to control me. Jason reached into his pocket, but he didn't pull out a ring, he pulled out a key. I can't promise you a normal life, he said. His voice was steady but his hands shook slightly. I can't promise we won't face judgment. But I can promise that I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice trusting me. He held out the key. This is to a house, not this penthouse. A real house, in a quiet neighborhood, with a yard and normal neighbors. A place where you can have the life you deserve. Jason. Marry me, Cynthia. Build something new with me. Something that's ours. Not my world. Our world. Tears streamed down her face. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her deep, real, full of promise and hope and a future neither of them had imagined possible. When they pulled apart, the city lights seemed brighter. Warmer. I love you, Cynthia whispered. I love you too. They stood there holding each other, the social worker and the crime boss, the woman who believed in the system and the man who operated outside it. 2 people who should never have worked. But somehow did, because sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the safest place to fall. And sometimes love means accepting that the world is more complicated than good and evil, right and wrong. Sometimes love means choosing the person who sees all of you. your strength, your fear, your principles, and your survival, and loves you anyway. Cynthia had reported her ex to the police seeking justice through the system she'd always trusted. She never expected to find it in the arms of a man the law called a criminal. But she did. And she'd never been happier. And that is the story of how Cynthia found safety and love in the most unexpected place. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed Cynthia and Jason's journey, please hit that subscribe button. It's free and it really helps me keep creating stories like this. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Would you have made the same choice Cynthia did? Where are you watching from? I love hearing from you all. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect.